Hi, and welcome to the Kelley Kitley podcast, America's Social Worker Unfiltered, where every week we have hopeful, honest, and deeply human conversations with change makers. And I am just so excited to have Charlotte Clymer on today. And I'm going to read your bio from social media:
Oh,
writer, queer, lesbian, Army vet, Texan, Hoya, Jesus fan, Perpetual. And I thought, who better than to have you on for Trans Empowerment Month? And you are the epitome of empowerment. I have to tell listeners how I just was so wowed when I met you a couple weeks ago at the Clinton Global Initiative. We were both content creators, and we were in this room, and I walked in and was a little starstruck and was like, "Oh my gosh, you look so familiar to me. Do I see you on like CNN or something?" And you were like, "Sure, maybe." And the person who was in charge of the content creators was like, "You're kidding, right? Like, you are so humble." And as a follow up to that, when I posted that I was going to have you on the podcast, people were DMing me saying, "Thank you so much. I love her. I'm so excited to hear your conversation." So I am giddy with lots of coffee this morning and just want to like dive right in with you.
well, and can I say that, you had such great energy in the room at CGI. For those of you who are watching, Kelley was just such a ball of light in our group, and everyone loved her. And I mean, this will not be surprising to any of you, but you brought such a lovely energy to the proceedings, and it really kind of kept people going through two very busy days.
Mm.
So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. And I was, probably the oldest in the room and came in feeling a little intimidated as a content creator because I like to write. And when I'm speaking, I usually have somebody doing camera and lights, and you were just so accommodating and saying, "What can I do to help?" And so that was just such a gift to me. So I'm on fire. I'm located in Chicago. I am trying to do everything I can to educate people in my community, my followers. I had somebody on earlier this week talking about immigration and resources. And as I mentioned to you when I asked you to be on the podcast, I had an old teacher of mine who's an 80-year-old Catholic nun who is an ally advocate for transgender youth. And she is on a mission to just create a sense of safety in this world for transgender folks. So I went way back with you in looking at prior videos
You
and
did.
things that you have done. But can we just start with like, how and why are you here today doing the work that you're doing?
Oh,
Such an
goodness.
open-ended question.
Yeah, no, it's open-ended, but those can lead to the best conversations. I think I'm in it for similar reasons that you are, because I would not be here were it not for the kindness of other people,
Mhm.
many of whom did not know me, but built a world that I could thrive in as a human being and live in my full authenticity and have the things I need to at least get on the path to leading a happy and healthy life. I think about how all of us are the culmination of things done by strangers who, many of whom would never benefit from the changes they were making. And so, I think our existence in some small part is making it easier for others to come after us to live their best lives.
Mm.
I mean, you have such this illustrious career in social work. I have been the beneficiary of the expertise and compassion of social workers. When I was a kid, when I was in the military, when I was medically retired from the military, and working my way through the medical retirement process, there were social workers all throughout those phases of my life who made it so much easier for me to exist. Um, I think social workers are angels. I don't know how y'all do it. I really don't. And so, I'm just incredibly thankful for the work that you do and that for social workers generally and the work they do.
Thank you. We're a unique breed, I will say so. And social workers helped me on my journey as well. And that's what made me decide that I wanted to make a career in it. So, Charlotte, something that I have been so struck by is how you have broke through barriers and, you know, knowing that you came from Utah, then moved with your mom to Texas, then identify as a Jesus lover in a time when you may have been very judged, and listening to you say this internal struggle that you had with um, self conversion therapy and trying to convince yourself of something that you didn't feel was in your soul. And I remember being a counselor at a Catholic school, and the administration told us early in my career, if anyone comes to us seeking counseling about being gay, that we should practice convergent therapy. And I
Mhm.
was like, this is against every fiber in my body. So the gay kids did come to me and I didn't practice convergent therapy, and probably would have been fired. But I ended up leaving ultimately. But, all of these like very restrictive communities, I feel like that could have been a roadblock for you, you broke through. And I'd love to hear about like where did you get that strength? Who encouraged you in some of these very structured and conservative communities?
That is such a good question. Well, first of all, and I want to point this out so no one is misled. So I did spend about a year and a half when I was a kid in Utah, with when I was living with my mother as a very very young kid.
Okay.
But I was born in Oklahoma.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm sorry. My
Oh
fault.
no, no, no,
Thank
no.
you.
And
Thank you.
the reason you saw that is because many years ago I gave an interview with a reporter who asked for my life story, and I very briefly mentioned Utah, and then for some reason he put that central to the piece, and then someone I didn't even, I didn't do my Wikipedia article, but someone put it in there that she grew up in Utah, and now everyone, like a lot of people think I grew up in Utah. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out because I'm a proud Texan, and I
Got
would
it.
never want people to think I'm not a proud Texan. Um, no, that's a great question though, because I did grow up in Central Texas, and I grew up in a socially conservative environment where it's complicated because there were many pockets of empathetic spaces for queer folks. There were conservatives I met, and Republicans I met in Texas when I was growing up, who had no issues with gay people. But I think that we get one of two narratives. We either get that the South is this forbidden place that is extremely cruel to all queer people. It's impossible to be queer there. And, it's a matter of survival. And I think for a lot of folks, that certainly hews closer to the truth.
Hmm.
But for a lot of us who are queer, it's much more complicated. It was hard growing up in the closet in Texas. But I also did know openly gay adults in my community who were living their best lives, who were not out in the open necessarily in terms of holding hands or, you know, um, uh, being open in that way. But, people knew they were gay and they were still treated like members of the community with respect and dignity.
Hmm.
And I wish that nuance were more recognized about the South. Did you know that the vast majority of LGBTQ people and a majority of trans people in the United States live in the South and Midwest?
No,
It's
I didn't, which is why I wanted to have you on because I'm just as ignorant about my own judgment about the South, right? Like, so it is so important for people to hear this because as somebody who is uber progressive, that's my judgment. So you're breaking that barrier.
Yeah, I mean I think that's a very widespread perception and for good reason because there is a lot of intolerance in the South. It's certainly true.
Okay.
But there's so much to be proud of in the South. And I wish that folks would get all of it. I wish they would get the good along with the bad and realize that, all of us who are from the South, we're a combination of so many different factors about, which state we're from, which area in that state we're from, uh, what are the regional cultures like? How does that play into our family structures? I mean, it's hard to explain, but there's so many things that make me proud to be from the South, and there's so many things that I know need work.
Mm.
And the inverse of that is
Mhm.
that, you grow up and you watch these shows about sitcoms that are based in New York or LA or Chicago, and they show the really good things about the North. But you move up north and you realize there are bad things too. You do experience homophobia and transphobia, and people of color experience racism in the North, and
Mhm.
misogyny is certainly a thing in the North. So I wish we all could get to this place where, we stop putting the country and specific states and specific communities into one of two boxes, either good or bad, because I don't think that's helpful to anyone. And what I love about, your approach is that, you try to see the complexity of all people and the nuances of people, and you don't judge them on surface appearance, and that means a lot. Um, I think that's what's key to navigating these environments, because there is a degree of survival when you grow up in a conservative environment, but there's also things about it that make you stronger. So, growing up in the closet, I knew when I was 3 or 4 that something was off. And I didn't know how to put my finger on it. I didn't know how to explain it. I just knew I wanted to be a girl.
Mhm.
And this is not all trans people. A lot of trans people don't realize they're trans until much later in life.
Mhm.
And there's no wrong pathway. Someone who realizes when they're a kid that something is off and that they don't want to be the gender they were assigned at birth, you know, they are no better or no more valid than someone who doesn't realize this until they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
But I knew something was off. I just knew it.
Mhm.
And as I went through elementary school, middle school, high school, I kept trying to cleanse myself of this desire because I thought something was wrong with me.
Mhm.
And I thought maybe if I pray enough, maybe if I try to be a really good kid, maybe if I do my best in my own limited way to be more masculine, that I will somehow, I don't know, remove this desire from my soul.
Mhm.
And it never went away. I got good grades as a kid. I was a goody two shoes. I played football in high school. I, did the things I thought I was supposed to do, and it
Mhm.
didn't go away.
Mhm.
When I graduated high school, I joined the military. And I joined the military because I wanted to serve my country. That was certainly the primary reason. But, in the back of my mind, I thought, I bet this is what finally removes this desire. I'm going to join the military, go through the training, be part of the culture, and this need to be a woman will fade away. And I was shocked a year into military life to accept the fact that this is not going away. I mean, this is going to be part of me. So the choice becomes, do I just live with this internal anguish for the rest of my life?
Mhm.
Or do I figure out a way down the road to finally come out? And, you know, there's so many complex layers to this, but really um, it became a journey of trying to accept myself in pieces and bits, slowly but surely. And it was a long, long pathway. So that, by the time I did come out, I was still terrified to come out. But I had like, I don't know, I would say created this foundation of anesthetizing the pain and the anxiety to some extent.
Mhm.
That's a long answer.
No, and Charlotte, I'm sorry if I'm distracting. Usually the person I'm interviewing gets tearful, and I just feel so emotional listening to you because um I think no matter what somebody's going through, the pain of not living your authentic life, it can destroy somebody, and
Yes.
feeling like our outsides don't match our insides. And so, and I think of transgender kids that I know now who are 5 and 6, and tell their mom that they want to change their name, and want to dress a different way than they had been dressing for most of their life. And I live in a very progressive community outside of Chicago, and um, seeing this being embraced today in 2025. And like, what was it like? Did you share any of this with your own family or your mom, or like who did you talk to when you first started kind of coming to this awakenness, if I can call it that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good word for it. I didn't tell the first person I told was when I was and actually said the words, I want to be a woman. I didn't tell anyone until I was 24, 25. When I was growing up, I would not have told anyone under duress. You could have, tortured me and I wouldn't have said it out to anyone
Yeah,
out loud. Because I figured once you say that, you can't come back from it.
I
That's what I thought in my mind.
yeah.
Because that's what I've been taught.
Hmm.
You grow up in this environment that conditions you to believe that the absolute worst thing that you could call a boy is to call him a girl.
Hmm.
The worst thing you can call a man is to call him womanly. That's the worst insult possible.
Yeah.
And for me, I was very confused because I thought, well, maybe it's not that I want to be a girl. Maybe it's that I have a fluid sexuality somehow, even though for me that aspect of my makeup was pretty crystal clear. I was only attracted to girls.
Hmm.
I almost wanted to be attracted to boys because that would have made the calculus a lot more simple.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it just wasn't. And
Mhm.
so I kept waiting when I was like 9 or 10, like maybe something's going to kick in and I'm going to become attracted to boys. And it just never worked. It never happened. There were attracted boys in my class,
Mhm.
and I would look at them and think, maybe tomorrow I'm going to come in and I'm going to get the kind of butterflies looking at my male classmates as I do at my female classmates.
Mhm.
And it just never happened. So, you know, the way that this manifested was that I tried to I tried to do the kind of, I don't know, code switching that I guess queer kids in the closet typically will learn, but I wasn't really good at it. I was I kept I kept doing things that I probably shouldn't have done. So, for example, um, I loved being in choir. I loved singing, and I was a soprano, and my choir teacher comes to me one day. This big guy. He's like 6'4", 300 pounds. He had been a high school football player, very manly man. And he
Uh-huh.
calls me into his office, and he's like, "So listen, um, you have a great voice, and I wanted to see how you would feel if I nominated you for the All City Girls Choir." And before I could even answer, he was like, "Well, listen, and I want to be clear about this. This does not mean you are any less of a boy at all. This just means you have a great soprano voice, and I think your voice part would be very good for this choir, and it's quite an honor.
Mhm.
And I've talked to the other teachers or the other choir instructors in the district, and they think it's a great idea." And he was waiting for me to get upset.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brain fireworks are going off, right? I'm like, "Oh,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
this is amazing. This is great."
Right.
But then I'm trying to have to tell myself, okay, act disappointed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh my
you know,
gosh. Yeah.
yeah, pretend that
Yeah.
this is happening.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know. That sounds, ooh, yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, I know. I get it. I get it. So just take tonight to think about it.
Mhm.
Come to me tomorrow morning. And if you want to do this, we would love to have you, but I understand if it's not something that you feel comfortable with. Uh, you know, I think it's hilarious looking back on that because that was the greatest gift I got at that age
You did
was
it.
yeah, and I did it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I auditioned and made the All City Girls Choir that year as a soprano. And it was one of those things that popped up where I was warring between two sides myself. There was the protective side that told me, make sure that you're not effeminate. Make sure that you're policing your language and your mannerisms, that you're not, doing things that are considered girly.
Hmm.
There was the other side of me that was trying to rationalize the things I did as not girly, but just things I happen to be interested in, which, by the way, is otherwise a healthy viewpoint.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's not how I was approaching it. It was these are things I like because I like them, but also they make this internal part of me feel affirmed as a girl. So there was that. There was, you know, seeking out things where I could that felt girly to do, things that I could do in private, like keeping a journal or watching, you know, kid shows that skewed more girly
Hmm.
at the time.
Hmm.
I'm speaking about this from like a child's perspective, by the
Of
way.
course. Yes. 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 Thank you for taking us on this journey.
Yeah, and it was so complicated because I think most of my childhood I thought I was doing a pretty good job of hiding this part of myself. But when I look back, I was not doing a very good job of it. And so, there were a lot of folks around me, particularly adults, who I think assumed I was gay, and assumed that that would come out at some point. Um, And I can look back and see and understand why they thought that. But at the
Mhm.
time, I thought I was doing a good job of hiding this. Um, now there are there are kids, queer kids, who are far more sophisticated in hiding that part of themselves, and so I don't want to ignore that at all. I was not so sophisticated. So it is strange looking back because I did manage to get through my childhood in one piece. But there was a lot of anxiety, and there was this constant pressure to perform in a way that would keep me level, like keep me at the threshold of acceptability with the adults around me,
Mhm.
um, while also knowing that I was doing things that were probably not what boys should be doing, or what were culturally acceptable for boys to do at that
Okay.
time.
Hmm.
So
But
it was
there
it was
wasn't,
odd.
I think of, my kids, I have four teenagers and what they're exposed to and language that they have heard, whether it be on social media or from peers. I mean, you didn't experience any bullying or um, self-hatred, feeling like you weren't fitting into a certain mold or judgment from grandparents or siblings or aunts and uncles, or was there any negative influence around you? Because I think looking at you now, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're amazing, and you've embraced this and you're educating people. I know that was not the entire journey for you where you
Yeah,
are now.
there was bullying. There was certainly bullying, but it was complicated though because my way of overcoming bullying was to be the best at things. So I thought, if I can project strength through the things I'm good at, it will be harder to bully me. And I think to some extent that did work. Actually, to a large extent that worked. But at the same time, I remember in eighth grade, eighth grade, seventh grade or eighth grade. No, it was seventh grade. In seventh grade, I wanted to be a cheerleader at middle school.
Mhm.
And I had seen male cheerleaders in
Mhm.
college football games on TV.
Yeah, my
And I
grandpa was
thought,
one.
yeah, yeah,
Sure.
well, there you
Uh-huh.
go. And by the way, most of our Republican presidents over the past 4 decades have been male cheerleaders. So that's a little factoid. Um,
You're just saying.
yeah, just saying, just saying. Um, so but the reason I wanted to be a cheerleader was totally because the girls that I looked up to in seventh grade and eighth grade were cheerleaders.
Mhm.
And I wanted to wear the cute cheerleading outfit and the skirt, and knowing that even if I did become a cheerleader, I would not be able to wear that,
Right,
right?
right.
But I wanted to get as close as I could to that. And so I went out for the pep squad in sixth grade. I was the first boy to ever go out for the pep squad. And I thought this should totally be fine. Like this is totally gonna be fine. Um, my classmates know me. They know I'm not gay. They know that I'm not, into girly stuff because in my mind I'm keeping that part of myself well hidden.
Yeah.
This kind of blew that cover to a large extent though.
Mm.
And I got made fun of and bullied a lot. And then the adults stepped in and they, really worked hard to offer a protective environment at the school, that is.
Okay.
My mother was not happy at all about this. She
Okay.
was not happy. She thought it was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
She was very upset that I would try to go out for cheerleading because she did not want a son who was into that. And what I look back on though is that most of these teachers were conservatives. These were Republicans, and they wanted to make sure that I was protected in becoming a cheerleader. And it's one of those things I look back on now, and I'm very grateful for that sense of nuance and humanity they had.
Mm-hmm.
Because truth be told, they probably would not have wanted a son who was into cheerleading either.
Sure.
But they still went out of their way to stop the bullying,
Mm-hmm.
to tell me if this is really what you want, we'll have your back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they didn't come out and say, because they probably suspected that I was queer to some extent, but they,
Sure.
they didn't come out and say, it's great to be who you are and you should live in your own skin and all that. It was more like, if this is what you want to do, as long as you're a good kid, we'll have your back. Um, and it's one of those things where I didn't back down. I just pressed forward, did the pep squad the entire season, went to the football games and cheered and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the cheerleading coach herself was not so kind about this. She was the only adult in the entire situation who was not cool with this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And she calls me into her office one day and she more or less tells me that I am never going to allow a boy to be on the cheerleading squad. That is never going to happen. Um,
What?
Despite what the other adults had told me, despite what the principal had told me,
Uh-huh.
and this was her confiding in me. She said, look, you can try, but I'll find a way to cut you from the team. I'll find a way to keep you from being on the team.
Oh my
So we can
gosh.
make this hard, or we can do the easy thing and you find other interests. And so, I recognized it for the heads up that it was meant to be, although it was not kind on her part and certainly not empathetic. I recognized it as her trying to avoid a situation that could spare us both that heartache. So I went out for football the next season, did really well. Um, and that's how I survived middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I learned to bury that part of myself, um, which is unfortunate. But in that environment, you just do what you can do to get through things as you're learning more about yourself. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
happy story
Yeah,
necessarily, but it is a story of how queer kids just learn to survive.
sure.
Because I mean, teenagers don't know themselves, they don't
Right,
know the world
right,
around them.
right.
We're trying to figure these things out day to day.
Uh-huh.
Queer kids are under not only that normal pressure, but then this whole other umbrella of complexity that is just so difficult to navigate.
Mm-hmm. You don't remember feeling shame, embarrassment, rage, anger, like what as you're in that office, can you tap into those
I
feelings
was
you had at that
angry.
moment? You were angry.
I
Yeah.
was very angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I knew, what's funny is that I was in her office, we're having this one-sided discussion,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew intrinsically this was wrong. Like I knew she should not be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I could probably go to the principal and even then, I think I was how old was I? 12, 13. I knew that this was one of those things that you could call the ACLU and, get something done about this. I
Uh-huh.
was a precocious little shit with my political knowledge even back then. So I knew that what she was doing was wrong.
Hmm.
I also knew that there's a question of whether or not it was worth it to fight it. And I did hate myself for not fighting it
Hmm.
at that time. And I also knew that there might be better ways to handle this. And I wasn't sure what to do, so I went with the safe route.
Hmm.
I look back and I wonder sometimes, maybe I should have fought it. Maybe I should have gone to the principal, or called the ACLU
Sure.
and proceeded down this pathway. Um, but I went with the part that I thought the pathway that I thought would be easiest for me long term.
And you're making up for it now.
Yeah, and I'm clearly making up for it now because
Seriously. So, can we jump to the military? So, you go to
yeah.
the military, 3 years.
Oh
What
yeah,
was
yeah.
what was that
Yeah.
experience like for you?
Yeah. So 6 years overall. First 3.5 years were
Uh-huh.
enlisted.
Okay.
Um, and it's funny. I remember being in the recruiter's office, and I had just taken the ASVAB, which is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. It's the test that recruits take to figure out which jobs we qualify for.
Hmm.
Did really well.
Hmm.
And he's like, all right, so you got high scores. You can do any MOS you want. You can be a reporter, you can be a translator, you can go into intelligence if you want, anything you want. And I said immediately, I want infantry. That's what I want to do.
Hmm.
There was this pause. And he said, oh, okay, you can be a reporter, you can be a translator, you can go into intelligence. Like he literally repeated the
Yeah.
options.
Yeah.
Um, and come to find out that, neither he nor the other recruiters in the office thought the infantry was the best path for me.
Why?
Uh, um, they were all infantry themselves.
Okay.
They didn't say this out loud.
Yeah.
They did not say that you would not be good in the infantry, to their
Okay.
credit. Uh,
But
but
some things are interpreted
some
when
things are interpreted. And they did not need to know me well
okay.
to have a concern about whether or not I would thrive in the infantry. I wanted to go in the infantry because I thought later on I might want to go into politics. And by then I had read all these biographies of great leaders. And, some of the people I admired the most, one thing I didn't admire about them is that it seemed like they went into the military to check a box.
Hmm.
And they would go an easy way. And I'm not going to name any name because I don't want to be disrespectful, but
Yeah.
they might be a reporter for 18 months
Uh-huh.
or they might take a desk job or something. And I didn't want that. I did not want to do the Air National Guard
Hmm.
to avoid the challenge of being in the military. So I decided I'm going to take the hardest job I can, the most challenging job I can. And
Of
to me,
course.
that was going into the infantry.
Hmm.
Um, and my recruiter was, I could tell he was skeptical, but when he saw how much I was committed to this, he was like, all right, let's do it. We go to the MEPS office, the military and processing station in San Antonio, and we're talking to the civilian who's doing the terms of my contract. And the civilian is like, he's like, all right, how long do you want to do on your initial contract? And back then you could do 2 years to 6 years, like that was the range. And I was like, well, I want to do 6 years. And my recruiter jumps in. He's like, okay, whoa, 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 let's why don't we do 3 years and see how we feel? And bless this man for doing that because he really looked out for me.
Hmm.
Um, he's like, let's do 3 years and just see how we feel at the end of the 3 years. And then if you want to re-enlist, you can keep going. And so, I ended up going to Fort Benning, Georgia, and doing infantry basic training, 15 weeks and 3 days. And I had every intention of joining a frontline infantry company and then deploying to Iraq or Afghanistan. And at the end of infantry basic training, uh, a few of us were pulled into this room and we were given a presentation on the old guard. The Old Guard is the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment in Washington, D.C. So anytime you see a flag-draped casket being carried in Arlington National Cemetery, that was our unit. We were carrying the casket and folding the flag and all that.
Mhm.
And I thought in my brain, like, I get to serve and I get to be in DC, and I was a political nerd, so that sounded amazing. It sounded like
Yeah.
heaven.
Yeah.
My only concern was that I wanted to deploy. I felt the most honorable thing would be deploying.
Hmm.
And so I asked, do we get to deploy? And the sergeant who was recruiting us to this unit said, "You sure do. Yeah, you get to deploy." Now, a very misleading answer, very incomplete answer. And it wasn't until I got to the unit that I found out that the old guard does deploy. They would deploy one company of soldiers to the Horn of Africa in Djibouti every 3 or 4 years. And so when I got there and I told my sergeant like why I was there at that unit, he's like,
Uh-huh.
"Okay, well, first of all, you're not going to deploy while you're here. That's not going to happen."
You're
Um,
so disappointed?
I felt like a schmuck. I really
Oh,
did. I felt angry, and I felt like I had taken the easy way out, which was the whole. Like if I wanted to take the easy way out, I would have gone into an MOS more suited to my abilities.
right.
But getting through infantry basic was hard because it was very challenging for me.
Hmm.
And I felt like I'd earned it, and I wanted to go deploy and feel good about my service. And it took me a while to realize that what I was doing with the old guard there in DC was honorable and it was worth it. And I would not trade that 3 years in Arlington for anything. It was an education in sacrifice and understanding what it means to actually give your all for this country. Because the people whose remains that we carried to their final resting place
Hmm.
gave their all. And
Hmm.
that was not the kind of education I was going to get anywhere else.
It is so beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
just thinking of you and the images that I have seen of that work is really symbolic and spiritual, and I think speaks to who you are. um, we have a time limit because you and I are both so busy trying to like fit things into the
Oh
mold.
my
So I
gosh.
want to be mindful. Um,
Well, I
and
could
wipe
always come
away my
back too.
tears. What?
We could always come back for another conversation. I'd love that. We could do like a part two.
Hey, okay, I'm gonna hold you to that. But for 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 Trans Empowerment Month, I do want to release this, and I think you came out in 2017 as transgender. You were 28 years old at that time.
I was, oh gosh, 2017. I just turned 30. That's right.
Okay,
Just
okay. And in 2020, Fortune magazine ranks you as one of the most influential people 40 under 40 for government and politics category. And you write about politics, religion, and culture all over Substack. And people can find you. How often do you post or do you write
I
for
write
Charlotte's Web?
essays probably at least twice a week, sometimes more than that. And I
Okay.
write about politics, religion, culture, foreign policy, anything that pisses me off or that inspires me to talk to the world about it.
And you are so smart, and I get so much from the education that you provide. I just even learned so much talking to you this morning. But in closing, I do want to know, um like, what is your current emotional state with what is going on in our country? And I
Ugh,
know that, like, and you have 2 minutes, ready, go. Like, what is your perspective? What is your mission? What can we take away from what you have to say?
that's a great question. The 30,000 foot view is that I'm taking this day by day. And I think to some extent we're all taking it day by day because we live through a very uncertain time. Uh, I think it's perfectly valid to feel what we're feeling right now, but there are a lot of young people, and particularly young queer people, and particularly young trans people, who feel far more fear than I do in this moment, who have far less resources and security than I do. And I don't want them to feel hopeless. Our country has been through some very rough times. And this is one of them. This is one of the roughest times our country has been through, no doubt. But I think about the queer, queer folks, trans folks, women, people of color, religious minorities throughout our country's history who have been through a lot worse. And they got through it. And because they got through it, I can be here and exist in my authenticity. So, this is one of those moments where our generation and people who are like-minded have to step up and lead
Mm,
and build the kind of future that was built for us.
sure.
So yeah, I do feel sad from day to day sometimes, but I also know that that's the price for building a better future.
Oh my gosh, you are such a bright light. And it's so exhausting too, though. Aren't there days that there are days I wake up and I'm like, I don't have the fight in me today. But I know the alternative if I don't. So that gives me a little more energy, but it's okay to like take breaks,
It
right?
is.
And put your oxygen mask on and like sit in the quiet and pray and meditate and like those things I think give us energy to keep moving forward. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And I think self-care is important mostly because it recharges your batteries so that you can help others. We are no good to anyone else when we don't have the energy to keep up the fight that's ahead. So, yeah, self-care is important.
So, everybody who's listening, please follow Charlotte on Substack. She has created an amazing platform full of wonderful resources. And for all those who are listening, just a gentle reminder to find your passion and be the change that you wish to see in the world. Have a great day.